how are you? Welcome to the third episode of my podcast. I don't even know if I can do professional intro, but again, I preferred YouTube's format for this and just chilling and talking to you guys. But this one's gonna be a little bit more of a emotional episode. There's gonna be a lot of emotions running on this, but I'm just gonna chit chat with you guys. I know that someone out there probably needs this, and I wish that I could hear. I will say I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, so maybe there are. I know has to be a lot of stories like this one that pertains to rejection. So we're going to talk about rejection today and rejection wounds, which I know all too freaking well, and I'm about to be real talk and vulnerable, and I have a bunch of sessions to finish up, but I was called to do this, and I knew that if I didn't do this on the spot, just like the other podcast, I wouldn't be doing it at all. So let's just go ahead and just vent. But I had a really triggering dream, and it is Mercury retrograde right now. And I know that my subconscious and spirit has been reminding me of really, they want me to share these stories because it's very healing for me. I've actually wanted to do YouTube for a while. I had some people that know me personally, for a long time, I had started on and off growing up with YouTube. I used to have a blog, and I would always stop. I would start, I would stop. But I definitely think in this time too, especially when I'm helping so many people, I need to also remember I need to just use this outlet to continue to express and share my story. And I was going to share this one because I had kind of talked tidbits. This has a lot to do with, I mentioned a lot that I had gone through a good amount of racism and prejudice in my life. And I had talked about it a lot. And I had a dream last night, and I'll tell you guys the dream. And it was extremely triggering. Okay, so I'm about to be real talk and real vulnerable with you all here, okay? So basically I dreamt about, I had feelings. There was someone who's a childhood sweetheart. Feelings for someone, and it did not go well. And I had been rejected and ghosted many times in my life. And to be honest, the way I look at it is ghosting is just a very easy, especially I'm 25 years old, young, especially in my college times and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it is an easy bypass for people these days. Most people do not want to have, I don't want to say most people, many kids don't want to have mature conversations. It's not. No, usually that's something that people want to do. If they can just leave, they do that. So I don't, yeah. But, there was a situation, and it still is a soft spot for me with someone that I had pretty deep feelings for. And I had, regardless, I'd opened up a lot, that yada yang story. But it was extremely triggering because I basically grew up, and I've talked about this a lot, I grew up in South Brooklyn, which is if anyone knows about South Brooklyn, it's a really interesting place. I think New York in general is interesting because it is an immigrant. I've been talking a lot about immigrants. I just got really close with this girl, and she's Romanian, so she's lives in Canada, but still immigrant. We've been talking a lot about that. And most of my friends are immigrants as well, because I think that shared, I won't say shared struggle, but just shared stories brings us very close together. So even when I make friends that are, and that doesn't mean, by the way, I'm just sharing my story, it doesn't mean I can't have friends who are American or I can't have friends who are white, but usually there is a deeper bond with when we talk about survival and when we talk about our upbringing and, regardless. So even, if someone is white or, their parents, it doesn't matter. A lot of my friends, all of them pretty much are immigrants to America or somewhere else. Or they have cultural backgrounds in a sense, deep cultural, they speak different languages, so on and so forth. But South Brooklyn is an interesting place because even though there is that shared struggle there is a lot of deep prejudice because people can act how they act in their countries or bring those very strong values here, and you see it can be very segregated. So I've experienced, I was just telling a friend recently here, she's Ukrainian, but I was telling her how I had experienced, she was like shocked, by some of my experiences, things like people growing up talking to me in class, but they'd be like, don't talk to me, and I mean guys and girls, don't talk to me when I leave school, like stuff like that, like don't look at me when I leave school, stuff like that. I had really experienced and everything, because they would probably get in trouble with their parents, or their parents are very like, who are you hanging out with, stuff like that, and literally just because I'm Black. But a lot of deep, very triggering experiences, and a lot of this came due to me intermingling, which there was a lot of Black children, Caribbean children, that they don't really fully want to intermingle so much. It would just stay in their groups. But I would intermingle, and a lot of my friends, we would like intermingle because we just want friendship, and you want to intermingle. But either way, in terms of like races, I've dated like all races. But going back to the point, this situation was someone who was very non-judgmental, and he himself non-prejudiced, at least that's what he presented. And I haven't really dealt, especially when dating interracially, he's Eastern European, by the way, but I have dealt with ignorance, but not to like a crazy point with dating interracially. I may have grown up in Brooklyn, and I did go through a very difficult time with someone in high school when I had my first boyfriend, and he was Eastern European. This is not the same guy. And that had a lot of controversy because he was pretty like Muslim, a lot of controversy with that relationship, and that's where a lot of my racial attacks started. And then he went on to date a white girl who's a friend of mine after, and everyone praised that relationship after. I talked a lot about that on a podcast I did on my Instagram. I'm going to put the name of the podcast down below if you guys want to hear more about that story, but I do want to kind of stay on point. But yeah, so there's a lot of trauma when it comes to that, when it comes to dehumanization, and so much of my life I walked around feeling pretty worthless. I had this very big awakening pretty young about how, and I think it definitely came from what was happening at home. My parents had a very volatile relationship. I grew up in a one-bedroom. My mom also did babysitting, and she would do it for white families. So, and she still works in that industry. And there was so much shame I had growing up. My dad didn't work, and there was a lot of shame. It was difficult. It was really difficult. And there was shame from that, and I struggled a lot. I experienced depression. I wrote my first suicide letter pretty young. A lot of people don't know that. Around 11, the reaction to that in a Caribbean family was not okay. It was not taken seriously, and it was just more of like, I was not okay for pretty young. I was not okay. It affected me in school, and I was more just always it was interesting because even with what I do now, I feel like I had always tried to stay in the shadows in my life. Like I'd always, and it still happened, like even when I hang out with my friends now, there would be moments of just like disassociation. I would disassociate a lot, and I would just try to stay in the shadows in my life. I did not want to be seen. I had gone through weight fluctuations with my body. I had extreme anxiety and PTSD pretty young, and like my mom did the best she could, with what she had. She did put me in programs. She did babysit for, like I said, white families and everything. So, and they were kind and everything, but still, it was just a lot of processing. Pretty young, a lot of ancestral wounds there. And I'm getting vulnerable today. And I was always grateful and, very, very great. I'm a grateful kid, ultimately though, it wasn't even the materialism. I think the way that my mom coped with things was material worlds. And she did put me in a lot of activities to try to keep me out the house and everything too. Not keep me out the house, but try to keep me productive. But I mean, ultimately, a lot of the material things did not take away from wanting a safe home. So I would spend a lot of time with my grandmother and everything growing up. But the point is, there was just a lot of shame about my being. Because kids playing outside the door. But it kind of goes hand in hand, sound effects. Okay. Shame growing up that I had to process. Definitely needed therapy, and that was not going to be a go. No, okay. No, that was not allowed. Like, my therapy for my mom was like, put me in sports and put me in what, raise my confidence that way. So that's what she did. That's how she splurged. So I had a lot of after school activities. But yeah, growing up, I wasn't into spirituality super young yet, but I was always kind of into, but not like that. Like, I was interested in it. Like, my favorite movie was like Halloween Town and stuff like that. I didn't know anything really about tarot cards, but I loved astrology. Like, in middle school, I was talking about astrology. So like, I was kind of like always like along the lines of it. But I was like I said, in terms of making myself happy, I knew how to like entertain myself. I preferred not having, naturally, on a healed level, I'm a social person, socially selective, but I can be very social. I do like to be around people. I do love, but I had preferred to push people away because of everything that was going on at home. And around me, like, I didn't really have people, kids in school don't really always talk about what's happening, but I didn't really know kids who were going through, I didn't really talk about it, but I don't know, no one's having deep conversations. So a lot of times as a kid, when you're going through something, you think you're the only person going through it. But of course, now I'm grown, I've learned, like, so many people were going through certain things also, non-POC as well, people are going through things, but I didn't know that. So I felt pretty ostracized. I would go through depressive cycles. And then, yeah, the high school thing happened, and I had started to come out of my shell after that whole suicide letter thing. The divine would always kind of intervene. So I think my point was I didn't want to be seen a lot of my life, but the divine would do things like bring someone in my life to kind of like make me more social. Like, literally, I say the divine because I would always kind of have these human angels. Like, I had a human angel in middle school. Very dear friend. We're not super close anymore, but she went on her path, but very grateful for her. And I remember she was seeing me being bullied in middle school, and she like stopped the bully at the time, and it was a girl that was bullying me for years, and I didn't speak up about anything. I didn't speak up about it, and she witnessed it, and she stopped the bully, and she brought me over to her table, and she was like kind of popular at the time, and like, introduced me to people, and that like broke me out of my shell. So I was like coming out of my shell. She was such a blessing in my life. And but then high school happened. I got my first boyfriend. I also went through, like I said, a lot of weight fluctuations. I was in MMA at the time. No, I cannot like fight like MMA fighter. No, but for kids, MMA for kids, and I was like a black belt, at the time. So I had kind of like lost weight, and I didn't really care too much because, again, like I didn't care going into like middle school about my appearance because I never felt good enough. I never felt good enough at all, and I didn't feel worthy. So I just like couldn't wait every single day for the day to be over so I could just go back in my bed, to be honest, or just like play games on the computer or whatever. So I would go through these cycles of like kind of seeing my extroverted self come out and then completely done, and that was very young, and usually again cycles of whatever was happening at home. And I basically shut down again in high school after that first relationship. My ex was abusive, emotionally and mental abuse. He had his own issues, okay, but we were 14 and 15 years old. I did forgive him, but he was not the kindest individual in the world. And that on top of the fact that nobody wanted us to be together, due to race and so on and so forth. So I had completely shut down, and at that point I went through really a lot of darkness in high school. I missed a lot of days of school. I would take the long route to school and never make it. I would I would take the long route to school, even though my school was a walking distance to me. And I would go sit at a cafe and sit at a cafe all day in school. I didn't want to go to school. I almost didn't graduate because I missed so many days of school. I was mute. There was only one person, which I had mentioned in a previous podcast, that knew about the heaviness that I was going through. It was my best friend at the time. Like I said, the angels always kind of brought in somewhat of a saving grace for me. And I didn't really trauma dump on her at all. Like, I always kind of just felt guilty about everything. I felt guilty about speaking up. I, didn't even feel worthy of having her in my life. I didn't feel worthy. I literally didn't care if I walked outside and got hit by a car. Like, I didn't give a crap about anything. I was shut down. And I really wanted to, leave. I wanted to move. I wanted to go to California, and the divine, answered that blessing, because God knows we did not have, money like that. I mean, my mom, she made good enough money, we had ended up moving to a 2-bedroom apartment, because a family member, agreed, gave us, the apartment and everything, but we ended up moving, so that was, a blessing. But I had really wanted to leave, and just tapping into that self, those moments of pauses is when I'm tapping into that self. So I had really wanted to leave, and to be honest, I feel like if I didn't leave, I feel like the divine knew that I don't think I would have been here much longer. And the scary thing about what I was going through was I was one of those kids that also knew how to appear everything. I knew how to show up enough for my family members and my parents that everything was okay, to the point that they could just be you know what I mean? Oh, okay. I knew how to do that. So I had always just planned that if I was gonna go, I just wouldn't tell. I was not, even with my best friend at the time, I would say I was sad, but I was not going to tell anyone. I was not going to tell. I would just disappear, and it would be one of those stories. So that's really what it was. It was literally that. So this person I kind of had a dream about, so he was kind of one of those angels that came through, and I'm not angry at him at all, and I don't really want to get into too many details, but a lot of life happened. I did go to LA. A lot of my confidence came out after that. I started intermingling with different people, so I started to kind of find more of my voice. Even if it was a destructive voice, it was a beginning. Definitely way more of a voice than I ever had in but me and him started to connect after my ex, towards the end of high school. And it was a situation too, and I was dating other people, but I had dated all races, whatever, and it was a stupid date. It was not my first boyfriend relationship. It was stupid, just kiss, and it was stupid, but this was someone that I had activated feelings for me kind of deeply that I hadn't felt since my first ex. And there was a situation where he did, and I just gotta mention, he did get with a girl after that he was in a serious relationship with, and we weren't serious at all. I just started to develop deeper feelings, and she didn't happen to be white, but this is not, but it is very triggering. It was very triggering, for me, because there was a lot of trauma around the first one, and just how it was so apparent in society that, in the families, that was more accepted than me, and I already was in such a sensitive place. Also, not to mention, after that relationship, I had, gained back, a lot of weight and everything, too. I just didn't care. So that was, the final heartbreak of the freaking season, and I went to LA. And then I went to LA, I came out of my shell a little bit, and years later, me and him had reconnected, and it didn't work out again. But this time it was kind of worse. It didn't work out again. And I didn't, LA was a party place for me. It was not a place for me to take anyone freaking seriously in Los Angeles. It was like, so no relationship there mattered that much. Like there was, I'll tell you guys about a 31-year-old when I was 19 at a different time. But that was nothing, it was stupid. Everything was stupid there. Like everything was alcohol induced. Everything was high induced. Everything was not, I don't even know really if all the details of my story is exactly details of what happened. Everyone probably has a different story because I was drunk most of the time in LA, to be honest. But I was sober in New York because I'd come back to visit family and my mom did not know how bad I was really drinking. Like I said, I did a very good job at just like condoning myself very well. When I did write 21 Tales Later. That book is available on Amazon. You guys could hear a lot about the fiasco there. I'll put that down below, but she was, to my mother's great surprise, of what was happening. But still, that was a learning lesson for them to be more attentive. Too late now. But still, yeah, like we reconnected, and this time was even worse. And there was a situation where I had, me and him were starting to kind of have issues. This time it was like more of, it was getting a little more serious, but we had kind of way more serious than what was happening in high school, and we had started to kind of have issues, and we were both single, but his community that he hung out with was predominantly white, and I'm being careful with my words here because no one exactly said this, but they were not super receptive to me. That's the only thing I could say. Yeah, so, but these were not my friends. They didn't have to be receptive to me. And it was their core crew. It was their crew and everything too. You know what I mean? And it was a situation with like hooking up with like other girls in the friend group and all this stuff. So like my inner child came out and my fix-it child. So I really just tried to do girl code and befriend these girls and everything, like my naive self. And my dream was about that. It was basically about that. It was about some of his friends at the time and these girls were yelling at me saying, you just need to leave, you need to get out of here, like, you know, he doesn't want you, no one wants you. And I feel like my point in saying this, because it was really triggering. I woke up at like 7, like eyes open, 7 a.m., 7:30, and all is forgiven, and I know that everything's about perspective. If you were to ask those people involved, they would have a very different perspective, but it doesn't change. It doesn't change the matter of the fact. I went through a lot of these things just wondering what the hell, what the F. Because if I know damn right, and no one could tell me otherwise, that if I was a white girl, that things would have been easier. Without a freaking doubt. No one could tell me otherwise. And I had been the girl that, not also, especially when I got into spirituality, I would be the girl that people feel comfortable hooking up with, but not the girl that people feel comfortable committing to. And I know a lot of girls have that story, all races, I do. But that is something, and that people would call me exotic, and I'm interesting, and I'm fat. I just cut someone off too. That I was seeing for a couple of years, and he basically, you know, he did something kind of crazy. He had like bought a session for me just to kind of see me instead of apologizing, because he was really cold and harsh after I had like broke my celibacy for him. This is not the same guy, a different guy. I had broke my celibacy for him a couple months ago, and which was my responsibility. Didn't know that. But he was really cold and he was really harsh, and he did not respect me. I did not enjoy it. My body completely rejected him. That will be body rejecting people will be a different podcast. And he did some roundabout extra stuff, which I have learned with men. I do not like certain roundabout. I prefer you to just come to me like a human being and learn how to apologize. But I've experienced men doing these grandiose freaking things instead of just being human. Usually it just comes with a bunch of drama. And so that's exactly what he was coming in my life with, that nonsense. And And I fully cut him off, and I was like, done. I said, no, I'm not doing this. And it was gross. He like paid money to just see me, which I know what he really wanted. It was gross, but different story. But yeah, a lot of my lessons recently has been stand on freaking business, but not only just stand on business. This year, especially as I've gone through this karmic cleanse, I've completely made boundaries with people that do not serve me. I've learned a lot with friendships as well. Also, settling for friends that don't really serve me, not trusting my intuition with friends. About lenses, there was a lot of letting go and wake-up calls this year. I had a birthday, and it wasn't a lot of the people at my birthday didn't really appreciate me. I had to learn lessons with that. And it was harsh, but I know that everything that I went through, especially being like what I would, it came down to, especially at the end of the year, I do want kids. And I was just thinking, what would I tell my daughter? Like, if she went through half the stuff that I went through, what the hell would I tell my daughter? And I was just thinking about the advice that I would tell my daughter. And it would be like, oh my God, like as a mother, I would think about just viewing from, a mother's view of what I would be going through or what I went through or some of the choices. And I would go crazy. I would go crazy just thinking about what I had gone through and some of the people that's been in my life. And all is forgiving. I understand that we're young and we're all figuring out things. I understand that the race, if I was born, I do think that, white people do have a responsibility to have way more compassion and hold space for people of color in general, 150% with the privilege. I think that privileged people have that responsibility. I think that men have that responsibility because they are privileged people. They do have more privilege than women. Yes, they do. And I do think that they do have, that's a responsibility. But not everyone upholds that. And when we're young and we're dumb and if we're figuring things out, people hurt each other in the way of growth. And I do forgive, like anyone that I mentioned, I fully forgive them. I understand because I don't even need to hold on to that heaviness. But this dream came up because I'm in a time in my life now where I'm sorting out a lot of stuff. I'm sorting out my finances, and it's bringing up a lot of childhood trauma around shame. It's reminding me about the fact that I didn't have the easiest beginning. I've made financial mistakes, business mistakes I've made. I went through a huge weight loss journey, which I had an eating disorder, and I ate like 800 calories a day and gained the weight back and, had to go. I still haven't gotten rid of my size 2 clothes in my closet here. So it's a lot of heaviness that happened in the last year and a half, a lot of body changes, a lot of, there are accomplishments, but there were a lot more setbacks than accomplishments, to be honest. There was a lot of career opportunities that fell through. There was a girl that fully took a pitch that I did. We were working on a TV show and she fully ghosted, lost friends, just a lot of tower moments that happened in the last, I thought I was going through a Saturn return. I don't know what happened, in the last couple of years. And that does not mean I was a perfect person either. I had been shitty friends to people in the process. I went through depression again. I went through dissociation again. I stopped talking to certain people. I made mistakes in friendships. It was a tough year and a half. I'm still grateful. Like I said, 2 things can be true at once. You can be grateful, especially grateful because there were times in this year that I couldn't leave my bed. But it doesn't change the fact of what I've learned. And especially going to Los Angeles, especially knowing what it felt like to be that wallflower, to feel ostracized, to feel like I'm not worthy. I understand, especially with what I do for a living. I tell people, I know I use cards and everything for a living, and I think it's a beautiful thing, but I also know that 16-year-old me wouldn't have had the confidence to freaking do that, and I'm really proud of myself for that. And I think ultimately the message with this is, put your mental health first. Put your mental health first. Many things can be true at once. You can want to improve yourself, but while you're doing that, be proud of yourself for the small victories. Put your mental health first, and please go to spaces that feel like home. This is not about race, because God knows, you can't force connection, and you can't, that's another thing, you can't force connections. You cannot force friendships, forgive yourself. And remember that if you didn't come from perfect beginnings, there's no way that you're going to be a perfect person all the time. There's no way that you're going to say the right thing all the time. There's no way that you're going to, but what matters is that you choose to grow. And it's also okay if people don't want to be, if you've triggered people and they don't want to be in your life anymore, that's okay. You can take accountability, but that doesn't mean that you're not worthy of friendship. That doesn't mean that you're not worthy of love. I do think, yes, especially if you are a person of color and there is ancestral trauma, because your trauma didn't just start when you came out the womb. Your trauma is in your bloodline, that there are people in this world that need to hold space for that, especially being Black. Every other race has more privilege than us. Being a Black woman, the Asian race, the Spanish race. You know how many guys have experienced, Black guys, that, I've experienced Black guys choosing Spanish girls, Asian girls over me, but that doesn't make me, even if I'm talking about race here, that doesn't make me not like the girls or not associate. No, because, and also, don't let your heart space not be open to certain people. There was a time that I had gone around, walk around mad reputation, and I was upset. And I was saying, like, oh, I'm not friends with white girls, and whatever, I'm not whatever. But at the same time, I guess the complexity of it is being self-aware and not lying to yourself. Don't ever force yourself to fit in. There are friends that I liked certain of their characteristics that were white girls, but I knew that when it came down to, and that doesn't mean that just everyone is going to be my 911 call. That doesn't mean, no, that I'm a chaotic friend, but I knew when it came to certain conversations that they were not trying to have that. They liked me when I shut up, or they liked me on a surface level. They say party friends or class friends, but they didn't. I've literally had a girl in my life, and she was Russian, and I'll never forget one day on Twitter, it was like in school, and one day on Twitter, she was like, oh, is anyone up? I really want to talk to a friend or something. And I had commented, mind you, this is a girl that I was like talking to in class, like so fine. And I commented, and she had commented back and said, girl, you're my class friend. You're not my true friend, and I knew that's why. And the thing is, it's important to speak up about these things. And I would be ashamed because I was just like, I've talked about this so much. There's people that, in my life that's like, the teacher, like, get over it. I've heard that a lot, like, get over it. But these things are real. And a lot of them go unspoken about. And a lot of them just, they happen. No, talk about the times that people made fun of your hair. Talk about the times that, people said that sly racist things. Acknowledge it. Because there were times, like I said, in my life that I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't acknowledge the weird looks. I didn't acknowledge the energy. I didn't acknowledge. I let myself take advantage of. I didn't acknowledge it. Talk about it. Make it uncomfortable. Do that. Do that for you. Do that for your inner child. Because this story, I know I'm saying, other people have had as I'm talking about it. Whether you're, even if you're white, black, blue, whatever, you've witnessed something. You've heard something. You've heard a story. You know a situation. That guy that had paid me for a session, but really just did it so he could see me and hook up with me. He told me, because he got drunk. He got drunk or high or whatever the hell he was on a substance, and had FaceTimed me, or we're gonna FaceTime each other. At first, when he was sober, appeared super nice, and then he told me that he was cheating on his girlfriend with me. And his girlfriend was his usual type. Blonde hair and blue eyes. And again, I had held back so much because I'm like, oh, if I tell these stories, I don't want people to think, no, but it's your divine right to speak. Especially if you're a black woman. Especially if you're a woman. And if you do have privilege, speak up for other people. And respect yourself and respect your body and your womb. Another thing is like, please respect your body. You deserve pleasure. We are not just, and I've gone through that. I had went through a time where I just did not respect my body at all after I lost my virginity. I didn't lose it in the best way, and I didn't respect my body, and I went through just honestly and truly trigger warning, people just pounding into me. I didn't enjoy it. I thought I'd never enjoy sex. I thought something was wrong with me. I've had men tell me things about my body. I went through a lot. I also chose a lot. But it's because I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel worthy. And now I kind of live my life all about self-worth. I live my life preaching self-worth to people, self-acceptance, self-love to people through spiritual means. But I preach empowerment. I preach following your dreams. And I'm in this with you guys. I'm nowhere exactly where I want to be, I need to be on any scale. But I'm trying. And I'm grateful for where I am. I'm still growing. I'm growing with you guys. But yeah, the point of me bringing up that dream was, I was in a space, and literally a dream was like the girl yelling, and I was like moving back. So much of my life I had felt rejected, and that person had ghosted me, and I had felt worthless, and I wouldn't have been here because I felt that there were other people, other kids, other people that were more equipped for life and worthy of being here. And I didn't, and I remember just thinking, if as a Black woman, as I grew up also with my parents being pretty, hard on me too with school. And I had heard that Olivia Pope speech as you have to work 10 times as hard to have half of what they have. And ending this off, I realized I don't want what they have. When I was going through my weight gain, and I was horrified looking at my bodies and my boobs expand and everything. And it was crazy because I saw, there was a woman in my Uber the other day, 2 days ago. And I was talking a lot about body confidence with my friend. She had also went through eating disorders, and I knew it was God speaking through this woman. And still, I listened to subliminals, I reprogrammed my mind for my ideal body, whatever. But I knew it was God speaking through this woman. And it was funny because she was driving me home, and the Uber driver, and she was just like, oh, in your neighborhood it has a lot of nice food. She was a beautiful Filipino woman. It has a lot of nice food. And I was like, yeah, but that's why, I eat so much and everything. And she was like, what? She was just like, girl, you have one life to live. Eat. Enjoy the senses, enjoy the different foods. And it was funny because I love trying different foods. And she was like, enjoy. She was like, what? You're a person of color? She was just like, girl, she didn't say Black. She said, you're people of color. We're cultural. We have boobs. We have ass. We have everything, And I know everyone has different shapes and sizes of the body, and it's all beautiful. But she was just like, we have, enjoy, live your body. And I remember the horror that I felt having to buy an extra large pants again and everything, and looking at my thighs like, Jesus Christ, my arm used to be like this. And I was 115 pounds and 5'7", and now I'm not that. I'm not that, but I remember when I did, the thought process that I had of, I feel, because I was noticing that I was getting different attention, and for the first time in my life, I felt worthy. And that's when I had started kind of my spiritual journey. I felt worthy. I felt, but guess what? Every single thing I was attracting was worthless connections. Worthless connections. Connections that even wanted me more for my freaking body. It wasn't worthy connections. It was not. It was drama. It was nonsense. So I'm still on that journey of self-love and self-acceptance. I'm still on that journey. I can struggle with binge eating sometimes. I'm still on that journey with my mental health. It can be day by day sometimes. It can be week by week sometimes. Every single area of my life right now is under construction. I'm under construction. But I'm grateful, and I'm living, and I'm loving my humanness even more. I do love myself. I will say the most that I've ever loved myself. I am celibate again, and it's not changing unless I am 150% sure. I do not hook up. I do not date. I don't whatever. I will let love come in naturally. I don't like dating apps. I don't believe in them. I don't, love will happen naturally for me, and that's where I'm at. I'm focusing on my self-care. I went through some really scary times with my mental health, and it's going to take I don't believe in codependency though, but it will take a very special, true, authentic individual to be able to hold space for me. And I've learned that in friendships, and I've learned that in with love. If I know that I can attract, and I have been, friendships in a high vibration that I can share and I can be receptive, that are receptive to me and hold space for me, then I know that I can attract love in that way. And I won't settle for anything less. And when I understood settling for me is about a lack of genuineness, and I understood through this process, I'm very, very grateful. I'm grateful for myself, for getting myself here, of what I value. And I value truth. I value authenticity. I value, I don't care how much money you have, whatever, but I value growth. I value people who are self-aware. Again, I may have triggers. I may not always be. Sometimes I may be reactive, and my friends may be reactive, but guess what? We need to be able to have real conversations. We need to be able to say, hey, I didn't really like that. We need to be able to have mature conversations. Those are things I value. There was a friend, and I kind of talked about it in Tarot Reader, I Lost a Friend to Jesus. When I expressed my truth, they were gone. And what I've learned is, like, listen, if sharing your feelings to someone makes them disappear, and I say that with a grain of salt. It depends on how you do things, like only reactive to a degree. I don't believe in putting your hands on someone, whatever, like anything like that. Like, listen, if it becomes a non-safe situation, absolutely, you have the divine right. You always have a right to do, protect your energy, but you will never lose someone from speaking from your heart. You will never lose something true. And true connections require growth. It requires work. That's friendships, that's love, God knows, that's career, that's family. It does require work. You're dealing with a lot of people with a lot of history, emotions, people with different wounds, people from different backgrounds. There was a friend I had in college, and I'll be very honest with you guys. My parents were Caribbean, and coming to this country, immigrants are ignorant. And they did not always treat Asian people the best, because of whatever they learned growing up. And I didn't outwardly say any slur, but sometimes I wasn't as receptive. I had a roommate. I wasn't as receptive to my Chinese roommate as I would be to my Mexican roommate. And I recognized it was a subconscious bias, and she sat me down, and I'm so grateful for that. She was significantly older. It was an international dorm, and she sat me down like a child, but I'm happy. And she told me, hey, listen, this is what Asians go through in this country, or when they travel. We notice that people don't humanize us the same. And she sat me down and she told me that she didn't have to do that, in a very eloquent way, because that showed me that she said, I like you, I value our friendship, but I can't be friends with you if I'm noticing these, sideways jokes, or if I'm noticing certain things. I can't do that. And I'm very grateful because she didn't have to do that. But so much of my life and my purpose has been meeting people on a human level. It has been having hard conversation. It has been having very human, compassionate conversation. It has been expanding my mind, holding space. And by the way, after that happened, me and her became super freaking close. She currently lives somewhere else, but still love her on social media, whatever. She's happily married, beautiful woman, incredibly intelligent. She's an architect woman, but she took me to we were in LA in Koreatown, and she was Chinese, she wasn't Korean, but she took me to Koreatown. She made me try so many different food, and we went to restaurants. We'd get dressed up, we were in college, and go to these restaurants together, and she educated me so much about Chinese culture and certain things. She tried to get me to date one of her architect friends. It was cute. But real conversations get there, and there's a lot of people. The truth is about real friendship, real relationships. It's not about your comfort zone. It's not. It's anything but. It's about growth. It's about expansions. It's about the discomfort sometimes, but it's about facing it. And any friend that I have in my life today, I'll tell you, we may have gotten into arguments. It hasn't, always been perfect. We've had uncomfortable conversations. There has been deep, dark moments with us. Any real friend that's lasted, it hasn't always been perfect. And it's going to be the same standard for my relationship, but I feel safe. I feel safe with them. I feel human. I honor myself. Now, there was a time I used to go out, and every single time I went out, it was for attention from a guy, and I don't do that anymore. I honor myself. I got tested a little the other day with the guy who bought the session. I was done with him. And even in this time, again, I can have compassion for someone I've learned, but I don't necessarily need those people in my life. It's important. Equal give and take is very important for me. So I value my mental health. And I know energy, and I know vibes. And I will not go, I don't care what the opportunity is, go in spaces that don't feel like home. I will be that elephant in the room, and I don't care. There will be no company, there will be no situation that I will disrespect myself or a company with bad ethics, that I will promote. All right, I'm being more selective of what I invest my time and energy into. And I just feel like, which really bugs me out with people with privilege, because I don't understand how you could truly, especially religious people, but truly be connected to your soul and not be a humanitarian. It's very difficult for me to understand. You know what I mean? So everything that I've gone through, I'm proud of myself of what I became in spite of that. But truly, it's made me a deeper, more soulful, more compassionate person. And that doesn't mean I'm always perfect and I respond to whatever, and I still have certain things to work out in my character, and I'm 25 and I'm still learning, I'm still growing. But it does mean that, and it means I'm a lot stricter with my boundaries, and you gotta be. But I have so much compassion, and I have compassion, okay, because I heard a lot of stories that was very healing for me, from white girls growing up and saying like, hey, you have no idea what was going on at home, with my family and everything. I know it doesn't matter race, everyone goes through certain things, but I also know that privilege is real. And I know that when you have a certain amount of privilege, I do believe it's a responsibility to hold space and also speak up for those that are unheard and unseen. And I know that if you have gone through a lot of trauma, you need to be stricter with your boundaries and your energy, okay? And not be paranoid, but have patience with yourself. Be socially selective, which took me a long time to recognize. Protect your body, womb, that's for all of us, men, women, everything. Protect your energy. Go to spaces that really appreciate you and feel like home. Nothing is worth dehumanization. Nothing, no status symbol, no money, no check is worth dehumanization. Speak up. Have faith that the divine is on your side, okay? And yeah, there's so much more. And love yourself. And again, I keep saying, choose your mental health. And it's not worth it. It's so sad to me to see what I've gone through, but see what's glorified in the media and all these different things. And if all these stories coming out in the media teach us anything, but please, please, please protect yourself and protect your energy and forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Okay? I do, like I said, I've forgiven everyone involved. And I know different perceptions, but ultimately, yeah. And I want to thank you guys for allowing me to share my story and being here with me, but I love you. Bye, guys.